I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring guests that teach all of us about some segment of the law, how it's made, how it's broken, how it's enforced, how it's dodged and ducked, and how it could be made better. I try to have experts that really have current knowledge of a current subject. And frankly, I hit a double today. I've got two guests that are real experts. In fact, I think I hit a home run because they're talking about perhaps the most exciting, challenging, troubling subject for many of us today. It's immigration. Immigration from the standpoint of our government, our citizens, the immigrants, their children, and our merit as a nation that has been traditionally very welcoming. Everyone watching this show is the descendant of an immigrant. Now let's meet our first guest. Marc Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I heard you give a speech, and I've heard millions of speeches, you might guess at my age, that kind of just made my head snap. It was at Fond du Lac. It was at a presentation of a group that represents immigrants. I think the main subject of that particular evening was why immigrants should be allowed to have driver's licenses in Wisconsin, which I hope you can touch on today. But your speech went a lot deeper than that, and I frankly think that our country's in a crisis, and a big part of that crisis is how we're treating immigrants and how we're treating ourselves as a nation, and why I think it's dangerous worldwide, actually. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. I am both an immigration lawyer and a criminal law lawyer. Together with my wife, we've started a firm, Christopher and De Leon. We have offices in Milwaukee and in New London, Wisconsin. And our focus is we work with families who are not U.S. citizens. I put our practice into three main categories: those individuals who the government may be trying to remove them or deport them, which would require them to go to an immigration court in Chicago. The second area is what I would call family-based immigration. That is where somebody is petitioning for a family member to hopefully have them obtain a green card or a visa. And then the third is the criminal law aspect, where I work in Wisconsin courts with individuals who are not U.S. citizens. And the reason that that's so important is there's such an interplay between criminal law and immigration law. How a criminal law case may be satisfied or resolved is directly going to impact the individual in their immigration case.
Now, most of these people contact you, I suppose, initially because they don't want to be deported.
Correct. What I find is that people contact us when something negative has happened in their lives. Maybe they're briefly detained for something as simple as a driving without a license, or maybe a very minor ticket or crime, or maybe they simply haven't paid a ticket, and then they're stopped by the police. It's at that point that they realize that they're in some type of danger of losing either their immigration status or actually being physically removed from the United States.
Well, the concern about removal, I am sure, is major because many of these people have been here for 20, 30, 40 years. They have homes, they have children and grandchildren here, they own property, they have jobs. This is really their life.
Absolutely. I have clients who, like you said, have been here in an entire generation. They not only have jobs here and family here, they are actual business owners. Maybe they came in the 80s, maybe they came in the 90s, maybe even before that. But what we're seeing is that there is an emphasis on removal for people that this country traditionally hasn't removed. For more than a generation, probably going back to the 40s, there has been kind of a, I don't know if you would say silent agreement, so to speak, that individuals who come into the United States, who work hard, who pay their taxes, who don't commit any crimes, normally the government would not be aggressive in removing them from the United States. Where we see, it's only been recently in the last couple of years that we're seeing the federal government now target those individuals above and beyond those individuals maybe who have committed some type of crime.
Not only that, in my opinion, which is only an opinion, our government has demonized them. Our government has painted them as unworthy human beings, vermin that should be kept out, a danger to our society, criminals, when there is absolutely no basis for that. The most recent statistics I read is that an immigrant, as compared with somebody who was born in this country, is less likely to commit a crime. They're more likely to take jobs that you and I won't take. They have no way of reducing their 6 or 7% income tax rate to 1% like the rich people who've been here a couple of generations. And the list goes on. They're good, hard-working, tax-paying people who support the schools, and their children are citizens.
Absolutely. And overwhelmingly, my clients fall into that category that you just described. They are fathers, they are husbands, they are brothers, they are sisters, but more than that, they're people in the community. They're the people you go to church with, they're the people you sit next to at the diner, they are the people that you know and your children go to school with their children. Overwhelmingly, that's the case. The difficulty that we have is that these individuals have ingrained themselves in our community and we rely on them, and now we are trying to extricate them. These are people who have created great positives in our community. And on top of that, there's this misnomer out there, and I hear it all the time, about individuals that they're taking from the government. Let me tell you something about most immigrants. They're paying into the system in a much greater degree than what they are pulling out. Things like payroll taxes, Social Security, Medicare, they're paying into that every week, every time they get a paycheck. And guess what? They don't get any return on that. So that's money going into the government. They're purchasing gas, which goes to our gas taxes, and the other things. So this misnomer that they're bleeding the system or that they're taking away from the taxpayers, it's just simply not true, and I have to chalk it up to just fear-mongering and trying to gain a political edge among some politicians.
Hold that thought. We have to take our first 8-minute break because I talk too much. But Mark, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and my guest is Marc Christopher. And we're talking about immigration, and I think I have my share of ignorance about immigration, but one of the questions that comes up frequently when I try to educate people who are slightly less educated than I am about immigration is they say, well, why don't these people come the legal way?
Well, the simple answer is that there many times is no legal way, or the legal way can take up to 20 to 30 years to accomplish. And that's the thing that I hear all the time. Why don't they come the legal way? Our immigration system is really set up into 3 categories. There's family-based immigration, there's business-based immigration, and then there's what I would call asylee or refugee-based immigration. And what really people are talking about is family-based immigration. But let me give you an example of something that clients of mine go through all the time. Let's say you are a U.S. citizen and you want to petition for your brother who is living in Mexico. You can petition for that brother, but right now the backlog and waiting period is up to 25 years on that petition. So yes, you can certainly file for your brother, but that brother, if he's 25 now, he may be 50 years old at the time that he comes in to the United States legally. And so it's difficult to tell an individual, yes, your spouse can petition for you, but you have to wait 10 to 15 years. Another common example is that somebody comes into the United States, they get married, they have children, okay? But that individual, maybe they came in over the border. They didn't use a visa to enter into the United States. Right now, there's a law that requires that person, the immigrant who's coming in, who's married, who has children, to go back to their home country and wait 10 years before they can re-enter the United States. So if you have a 9 and a 10-year-old like I do, and you have to leave the country for 10 years, when you come back, those children are going to be adults. They may be married. They may be in college. So it's not a realistic system that we have in place in the United States. And there are a lot more impediments than what people know and understand.
Well, and many of these people who are coming into this country come in because they want to work and they're invited to work, and we have a shortage of workers. They're willing to do work that nobody else is willing to do, so they're serving a purpose. As a matter of fact, many countries are competing for workers. God knows we don't have too many workers in this country. Then many others are running away from something, like death. Maybe you can give us some examples.
Yes, and we're seeing an influx of that right now, even here in Wisconsin, where we practice. What is going on is that we have I guess you would call it an international crisis in Mexico and in Central America, that these governments in these areas are unable to protect their own citizens from the internal criminal elements within them. And by that I'm talking about the drug cartels and the gangs that really are the de facto government. And we hear it all the time that our clients, they come in, they talk to us about their story, where they've tried to start up businesses in their home country, whereby they tried to get ahead, and they're simply extorted by the cartels or the gangs. It's no different than the stories of the mafias in the 30s, whereby business owners are extorted. And they're threatened. Their lives are threatened. And these gangs really do conduct violence, and they're ruthless. So it's really an idea of they have no hope in their home country. They have no ability to change the system of government. They want to protect their families. They want to simply live a life whereby they're not going to be threatened on a daily basis, and take care of the people that they need to take care of. That's all they're asking for. Simple work, a simple life, and protection.
And we want them here. We want them to do our work. We always have. We're pleased with the addition to our culture. We certainly allow them to pay real estate taxes, sales taxes, taxes that are taken out of their paycheck. And as you pointed out earlier, they really can't get the benefit of Social Security and things like that. We are happy to have the cultural additions to our schools from their children and things like that. Yet we're making it difficult for them. One example is that the legislature in Wisconsin made it impossible for somebody who was undocumented to get a driver's license. Explain that.
Okay. So prior to 2006, you did not need to show proof of legal presence in the United States to obtain a driver's license. That changed in 2006 with the passage of a state law. What we have seen since then is an influx of criminal cases, because now driving without a license is a criminal offense to which you can go to jail. And so at the time that this law was passed, I was actually an assistant district attorney, and my case law doubled or maybe even tripled, because now I'm getting all of these cases where people are unable to drive, or they're being charged with a crime. I've never really understood why this has made sense. Number one, because immigration is a federal issue, not a state issue. And number two, the safety considerations on policy like this don't seem to make sense. Individual who is driving with a license is more apt to have insurance, is going to know the rules of the road, is going to be a safe and responsible driver. And then if, God forbid, something happens, there's an accident, they're not afraid of working with the police to ensure that everything is taken care of. Compare that with I don't know what the argument would be on the other side. Just simply, if you're not here if you're here without legal status, then you don't deserve to drive an automobile in Wisconsin. When you balance those two factors, it doesn't seem to make.
How long have you been a
sense.
lawyer, Mark?
Since 2001.
And my understanding is that you married a lawyer.
I did, yes. I married up too, yes.
And you practice law with your wife.
I do.
You are a man of courage.
I am. She's the boss at both home and away, at home and work.
We're going to take another break and we're going to hear from her.
All right, great. Thank you, George.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and the scenery is getting better. We now have another attorney with the same last name, but her first name is Eloisa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, you're a lawyer and the child of an immigrant, and so you have another take on the crusade that we're dealing with today. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you. Yes, so I am a proud child of immigrant parents. They were born in Mexico, and so for us it was an incredible upbringing. I grew up in California. My parents worked the migrant fields out there, and as well as the canneries. So hard work was always instilled in us to try to do better. My father and my mother wanted us to do better. So for us, it was a struggle at times, but also a wonderful success in the end. Was able to eventually get to law school myself and become a lawyer, and now practice law with my husband, and we do both immigration and criminal work.
And how does that work within the firm? Your firm, I think Mark told us, you have offices in Milwaukee and in New London.
Yes, it helps a great deal because with my immigrant background story, it really helps connect with the communities here in Wisconsin. There's a great deal of immigrant communities, not just the Hispanic communities, but also other communities. When they understand that you have an immigrant background, they really do relate and they appreciate that. People are surprised to hear that there is a strong immigrant community in the Fox Valley. There is a very strong immigrant community from the Latino community to Polish to Hmong communities. There's various populations here. It's quite diverse that people don't realize, and I'm proud to be able to provide services to those communities.
I've never known a time when I, in my practice of 57 years, received this many calls on immigration issues. Now, that's in large part, I think, due to things that were going on in Washington, and they've been going on in Wisconsin for the past 10 years as well. And yet, when my clients, who, as you indicate, might be Spanish background, might be Hmong background, or whatever, they call and they have an immigration problem, they say, "Do you do immigration work?" I said, "No." "And do you know of somebody who does?" I said, "No." And that's why I was delighted to hear Mark speak a couple of weeks ago. Now I know two of them.
Yes, it is extremely, we're very happy to be in the Fox Valley, especially because, like I said, there is a large population. When the practice was initiated, when Mark started the practice, we were in Milwaukee. So we did provide a lot of support to the southeastern immigrant community families that needed the support. But now that we're in the Fox Valley, I mean, there's a large number, especially in the rural areas of Wisconsin, that really need that support because they really have quite a strong story and quite a strong case for them to eventually receive the services and the help they need.
And my understanding is that the court system that deals with immigrant problems is clogged. What is the time situation there?
For their cases?
Yes.
It depends. So if someone's in a removal case, I mean, you're hearing cases being held up until the year 2023. They're backlogged quite a deal because a lot of discretion given to the government to try to resolve these cases are no longer existent. That has since changed since this new presidential administration came in place. So now the courts are extremely backlogged as a result.
What is the process for an immigrant to becoming a citizen right now?
Well, that's a very broad question because it depends on the immigrant story of that person. They can be a refugee. They can try to claim asylum. They might be here because they're claiming asylum. They're trying to run away from violence in their home country, or they married. They fell in love with somebody who is a U.S. citizen, and they now may have a basis to become a U.S. citizen. It may be family based, so it all depends on the immigrant background story of the individual.
A term I've heard for years and never understood exactly why it was significant is green card. What's that?
So it's the term used for someone who's a legal permanent resident. So while they're not a U.S. citizen, they have obtained legal status. It can be through a family-based petition. It can be through a removal court proceeding, or it can be as what's utilized in for example, a crime victim's visa.
Now, we have situations where some members of the family are citizens, some aren't citizens, some people are blocked and are in fear of being deported. Is that pretty common?
It's very common. We get lots of calls. I receive calls. I entertain phone calls with potential clients who were pulled over. Their son was pulled over, but they don't have status. Son probably had a valid driver's license, but they're just afraid that somehow their name is going to be utilized against them because it was recorded by the police officer. So there's a lot of fear, even though people aren't committing crimes. Just walking the streets, just engaging in everyday activities, dropping their children off at schools. They're very, very fearful of being detained by immigration.
How can people who have immigration questions get in touch with your firm? Give us the name of the firm again, and speak loudly when you give your half of it, because it's second for some reason.
Yes, it's Christopher and De Leon Law Office, and we're immigration criminal law attorneys.
And you're located?
1578 West National Avenue in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 554. I can't remember.
Our producer will fix the zip.
Thank you. Okay.
And you have delighted us today by bringing two young people with you, your children.
Yes.
And if we can get our cameraman Ron to get a picture of them, they will be on the show.
Thank you.
I want to thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Recently, I had a conversation with an area chief of police who expressed the opinion it would be crazy to give immigrants a driver's license. He said, that would give them free tuition, it would give them Social Security, it would give them Medicare, it would be a burden on the taxpayer. And I said, whoa, no, it does none of those things. What it does do, if we allow, in fact, require everybody to have a driver's license, is it helps the police. They can identify somebody. It allows somebody to drive legally, which is especially important with the kind of jobs that immigrants have, where they have to go in the middle of the night and milk our cows or serve our factories. It makes it easier for them to have insurance. It takes away the motive to leave the scene of the accident. It adds considerable money to the insurance companies. It reduces all of our rates. It makes for more responsible drivers. It makes it easier to identify people. It allows them to get work and travel to their job legally. There is no downside. It does not cost the taxpayer a dime. As a matter of fact, it benefits the taxpayer and makes it safer for all of us. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.